How dangerous Cambodia really is. Just as the man in front of me picked up his newspaper, a large number of armed policemen appear in front of him. Behind them, a mob with clubs and sticks is gathering. The man in the middle is in a daze. The mob raises a Molotov cocktail. The police shot him dead just as he was about to throw it. The thug fell to the ground and was engulfed in flames. The two sides immediately engaged in a chaotic fight. Without thinking about it, Jack rushed through the crowd to the hotel. By now the road was littered with bodies. Jack had to pick up his pace. He made it back to the hotel. He saw a crowd of people at the entrance. The mob had pinned a man to the ground. They shot him dead. Jack turned back immediately, but the mob spotted him. He pulled down a ladder from the wall and quickly climbed up. The mob follows him. Jack kicks the ladder off from above and shakes off the pursuit. He then smashes the glass and returns to the hotel. Seeing that the hotel door was about to be broken down, Jack immediately takes the lift back to his room. At this point he just wishes the lift would go faster. Back in his room, he immediately organizes his wife and daughter to leave. At that moment his eldest daughter was missing. The younger daughter told him that her sister had gone to the pool alone. Without time to think, Jack tells his wife to lock the door. He went out to look for his eldest daughter. He took the fire stairs through the kitchen and headed for the 4th floor. He saw the mob killing people inside. He grabbed a swimming ring and stuck it in the door. Then he picks up his daughter and runs. On the way he encounters a thug who stops him, but a bearded man intervened just in time to help him stop him and told him he could take refuge on the roof. Meanwhile, his wife, who was in the room, heard a noise outside the door. She cautiously went up to check. She found that the mob had reached the opposite room. She had to move a sofa and put it against the door until the knock comes again. It was Jack returning with his eldest daughter. The family then quickly headed to the roof. The mob was chasing them with guns and bullets passing by. It was all they could do to keep moving forward. But in the end, they reached the top safely. Most of the people here were foreigners who had come to seek refuge. Until now, their hearts were tense and relaxed for a moment. Jack reassures his family there will be help coming for them. Just then the sound of a helicopter is heard around them. The crowd thought help was coming. They all waved to the helicopter with anticipation. But the moment it turned around, everyone was frozen in their tracks. It wasn't help that was coming. It was the mob that was killing them. Jack immediately took his family under cover. Countless people were shot around them. Jack clung to his family. The helicopter's wing accidentally caught the rope. It crashed and exploded. But at the same time, the mob had broken through the door and reached the top floor. In the nick of time, Jack decides to take his family and jump to the opposite floor. Facing an abyss 100 meters high, the woman stopped in her tracks with a momentary weakness in her legs. But the mob was approaching behind her. Jack could only keep encouraging his wife. This time she took a few steps back and accelerated. Then she leapt. Seeing that she was all right, Jack quickly lifted his little girl onto the platform, while comforting and distracting her, and then throws a softball, throwing it quickly before it was too late. The mother on the other side shielded her with her chest, followed by the older daughter. But the scene in front of her made her turn and run in fear. Jack couldn't explain, and immediately went to grab her back. But the moment she was thrown, the older daughter had her arms wrapped around Jack's neck. The weight of both of them went down. Jack almost went down with her, but he reacted quickly and held onto his daughter. In the nick of time, good Samaritans pulled them up. As the mob got closer behind them, Jack cut the belt and tied his eldest daughter's arms and threw herself on her back. But in the end, she made it to the ground in one piece. And finally, Jack himself. He sped up and rolled to the ground. The family were gathered and about to leave when a shot rang out. The man who had just helped them. The man who had helped them was killed by the mob. Jack was ready to go downstairs, but it didn't work out that way. The door was locked. There was no choice. Jack had no choice but to take the risk. He climbed downstairs along the iron pipe. After making sure there was no mob inside, he quickly got his wife and daughter down here. Before they could catch their breath, there was a noise from downstairs. The thugs had mobilized a tank. Jack immediately smashed a piece of glass, while telling those inside to run, while carrying his wife and daughter in. But before he could take a few steps, there was a loud bang. The glass was blown to smithereens, followed by a continuous bombing. So Jack took his family and hid under a slab of rock, with a body to block the hole. The screams from outside were soon heard. The 4 men inside had to hold their breath, trying not to make a sound. After an unknown amount of time, there was no more noise from outside. Jack crawled out cautiously. He saw 4 men tied up and kneeling on the floor below. The next thing he saw was a large van speeding past. Jack's heart tightened as he watched. He couldn't just sit here and wait for death. So he decided to take his family. He decided to take his family to the American embassy for help. Just then a returning thug spotted them. For the safety of his family, without hesitation, Jack jumped on him and beat him to death. The scene horrifies his wife. Time was running out and Jack couldn't explain. He immediately started gathering supplies. He was surprised to find a key on the floor. Finally he went downstairs dressed as a robber. Using the key, he tried the motorbikes one by one. Finally, he managed to start one. So the family of 4 in disguise, and so the disguised family of 4 made their way carefully towards the embassy. The road was full of fallen bodies and homeless people. Suddenly a couple of thugs came up ahead, but it was too late to turn back. They can only move forward little by little with their heads down. In the process of moving, their motorbike is knocked over by the crowd. One of the thugs who helped him up, he saw his eyes, but he didn't say anything. He just turned around and left in silence. After a few twists and turns they finally arrived at the embassy, but the sight before them was a complete disappointment to Jack. Documents and bodies on the ground, scattered in front of the US embassy. At that moment a mob with guns came out of the door. When they saw the men they tried to shoot them, and then there was an explosion. The embassy was blown to rubble. The men also took the opportunity to flee quickly with their wives and daughters. They pushed open the door of a local's house. The owner of the house saw the 2 young children with them, so he took them in. They were allowed to hide for a while. The mob soon searched the area. They pushed the old man down and smashed things in the yard. It was only a matter of time before they were discovered, so Jack tried to grab a gun, but the opportunity to do so was delayed. To help her husband, his wife stepped forward to attract the attention of the mob. Jack rushes forward to grab the gun, but there were many of them. Jack, who had no experience in fighting, was quickly overpowered. The mob pinned him to the ground. They want to abuse his wife in front of him. A moment of crisis. The bearded man he had met at the hotel was taken into the courtyard by one of the thugs. He got down on his knees and pretended to surrender. Then he found the right moment to pull out his gun and kill some of the thugs. It turns out that the thug who held him hostage was also pretending to be a thug. The bearded man then took the family of 4 to their base. He told Jack that downstream of the river was the Vietnamese border. If they crossed the border, they would be given asylum, so they decided to take a break here. 4 hours later they were off. In his sleep Jack is suddenly awakened by the sound of gunfire. It turned out that a gun tower across the street had spotted them. They were then covered by the bearded man and his assistant. The men made a quick exit. In the firefight, the assistant was shot and killed, and the bearded man was seriously wounded. He knew he couldn't leave, so with the last of his strength he rose to his feet. He overturned the car that was being chased by the enemy. Jack took his wife and daughter and followed the bearded man's instructions. He ran all the way to the river. He told his wife and daughter to hide first. He went to the river to find a boat. He finally made a deal with a boatman for his shoes, but just then the mob's men came after him. The boatman rushed to tell him to hide first, but the feet eventually stopped in front of Jack. Jack was overpowered by the mob. The eldest daughter, who was hiding in the shadows, saw her father being caught. She rushed out and was caught too. The mob put a gun in the girl's hand. He told her to shoot Jack, or he would blow her head off. Jack tearfully encourages him to shoot to save his daughter. The moment of crisis, his wife attacked the leader of the mob from behind. Jack also immediately grabbed the gun. He killed the rest of his enemies. Finally the family quickly boarded the boat and set off across the river. Behind them, a mob pursues. Ahead, a warning of the Vietnamese border. Although it was dangerous to cross the border, but at this moment they have no choice. They had no choice but to take a chance. Jack raises his hands in the air, desperately trying to explain that they were just ordinary people. They were just trying to find shelter. Finally, at the last minute, when the mob arrived, the boat sailed into Vietnamese waters. They are finally rescued. The film is fast-paced and gripping throughout. In the moments of panic, it's Jack's calmness and every decision he makes, and his wife's unfailing support. The family's success is made possible by